Hello again, everyone. I try to do these things consistently on a Thursday, and today I'm with Nilu, and we're going to talk about being your own cheerleader. So, before we dive into this conversation, I think we all need to be our own cheerleader even more right now because there's so much uncertainty these days. So, Nilu, you wrote a book on this topic. So, I was like, I have to have her on. Can you tell us more about yourself and why you decided to write a book specifically on being your own cheerleader?
Absolutely. So my name's Neela Kaur, and I am based in New York City. And I am an author, speaker, and executive coach. And one of the reasons I wrote Be Your Own Cheerleader is because I hold the record for getting fired or downsized the most. I have been fired or downsized so many times that I've lost count. And so one of the reasons was because I didn't know how to be my own cheerleader. I didn't know how to advocate for my ideas. It's not that I'm not smart, that I don't have intelligent ideas. It was literally because I didn't know how to speak up and say, no, 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 that's my idea. Or people would interrupt me and I wouldn't know how to get back into the conversation. And so it came from this personal need. And it's through the years that I've realized like it's not just me that struggles with this concept of self-advocacy. There's so many people, so many groups of people that struggle. And so that was really what made me write Be Your Own Cheerleader.
Wow. I mean, you have me drawn in, right? I don't know about anyone else, but I'm drawn in because I'm like, you hold the record. Like that's I love the vulnerability, and that has me like wanting to
Yes.
jump into this conversation even more. So tell me a little bit more about that, right? The whole self-advocacy, speaking up for yourself. Like, how did you identify that as the reason that you were being let go so frequently?
It did not happen overnight. It took a lot of self-reflection and also just, experience. In grad school, I learned about intercultural dimensions, and I realized that, for some of us, we're not taught and that behavior is not modeled to us. So
Mhm.
I'm a child of immigrants. I was told, keep your head down, do your work will speak for itself. And that's a recipe for disaster in corporate America. If you just keep your head down and you do your work, nobody's going to know that you're doing your work. And it's going to be perceived that you're checked out, you're indifferent, that you're not engaged. And so sometimes we do have to grab the bullhorn and grab it. And I know it can be viscerally uncomfortable for those of us that don't love that aspect of, I call it the we and I dial. So some of us are very comfortable in the space of the we because we come from cultures that are very collective. And others of us are, living in North America where it's very I based. And so when you
Mhm.
have to dance and sort of go between this we and I dial, it can feel viscerally uncomfortable. And so I think one of the things that really helps me is knowing that it's contextual. Like I'm still a very we based person, but there's certain situations where I have to turn up the I and I have to self advocate for myself.
I love that, the we and I dial. So I learned a little bit about this. Didn't I love how you framed that? But in the military, we have something called "I Love Me" book. At least when I was in the military, right? I might be dating myself here for the more recent vets out there, but yeah, we had something called the "I Love Me" book where we tracked our contributions, and that's how we would make sure that we got promoted when the time came because they counted points and stuff. So I love that you're talking about like creating your "I Love Me" book in a sense and being able to say, "Hey, look at me! I've done these amazing things." So how did you, as a person who focuses more on the we,
Mhm.
culturally, how did you get comfortable with being able to say, "Hey, I did this. I'm amazing"?
I think I still am not comfortable. What I do is like I'll say, okay, I'm on a business development call. I have to sell myself. I'm a solopreneur. I have a team of people that support me, but I'm constantly selling myself. And so in those instances, I have to be comfortable in the I. So before that call, I'll do a little mental gym work and get comfortable with talking about myself and my accomplishments, which doesn't come natural to me. And so I think for all of us, any one of us, especially I have a lot of people that I work with that are from the military, and they say that it's all about the group and the team. And so how do you identify parts that you're responsible for, you're contributing to? And I believe there's an I in team, and we just all have to figure out ways to communicate the I, to highlight the I, because otherwise we will be overlooked for so many of the things that we want, like promotions, like raises, like all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big advocate for people saying like, "Hey, I am amazing," because what happens is if we get in that group setting, like culture starts at the individual level, and I think we often forget that. So if we create space for ourselves to celebrate our wins and celebrate our amazingness, it makes room for everyone else. And I think that's a great thing. And it's missing today, where we're a little too humble that we don't want to, speak up about our contribution. So, in your book, can you share some of the insights you people can glean from that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, so I hope you buy the book. But I think one of the things that I think is really helpful is, it's going to sound really woo-woo, but oftentimes what happens is there is a scared younger part in us that is fearful of speaking up for whatever reason. Maybe we're stuck at a particular age where we tried to speak up, but we were shot down. And so we sort of carry that in our DNA. And so one of the things that I talk about in the book and that I work with groups and teams is that we want to identify those younger parts so that the adult version can emerge forward, because the adult can handle any situation. The adult knows when to advocate for themselves, when to say, no, 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 that's my idea. It's these scared younger parts in us, maybe a 6-year-old, maybe a 15-year-old, that's like, oh no, I did that once and it was shot down. So it's kind of like embedded in our DNA. And we want to get past that and bring awareness to the fact that, hey, I'm an adult. I got this handled. I can take care of this.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, we see that all the time, right? Where people need that inner child healing or that inner child acknowledgement. So, it may sound woo woo to some, but I think that that's something that's being more talked about these days, because people realize, like, we wear our traumas, and trauma doesn't necessarily have to be a catastrophic event. It could be something small, like someone telling you to be quiet and you hold on
Yes.
to that.
Yes.
And you no longer want to speak up or advocate for yourself from there. So I actually love that you brought that up, Nilu. And I think that is something that as adults we need to pay more attention to. And I spend a lot of time talking about curiosity. And I feel like we lose the curiosity, which ends up causing us to lose the idea of going forward with an idea or speaking up for ourselves, because we're so afraid of the consequences that may occur. So what do you do? Like you mentioned that you do a little mental exercise prior to your business development calls and maybe before you speak and stuff. And I do the same. So what is your recommendation for someone who's like, that's a good idea, but I just don't know where to start when I come to create my routine to put me in this mental space?
There's one trick I use and it works every time. I will talk to myself in third person and I will remind myself of all of my accomplishments. So I won't say I did. I'll say Nilu did. Got published. Nilu did this. Nilu did this. And I'll do that before the call. Like, Nilu just signed this client. And then it's like there's an emotional distance that happens when you move from first person to third person. And it's like when you're in that space of sort of like that, there's a distance, you can then like step into the first person. But first, it's like take a few steps back. For me, going into third person and then stepping into first person really helps. So I will do that before, especially if I'm about to talk to someone who's like from a very, like, let's say I'm talking to someone from a big tech giant, right? Like, I know I've had those clients and it's like reminding myself that, no, Neely, you got this handled. But moving into that first person stance, I start with that emotional distance. And then it's kind of like a warm up. Just like when you get on the treadmill, you don't just start running right away. You slowly build up the momentum to go faster. And that's what I do. Like, I'll build up the momentum with conversations that I have with myself prior to the calls.
Nah, I love it. I love it. Look, being your own cheerleader.
Yes,
There you go.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
in practice what you preach. So tell me a little bit more, because I know a lot of folks who actually they want to be better at that self advocacy. So let's do like a case study, if you don't mind, where say I'm someone who I want to advocate. I know I've been doing amazing things, and I keep getting overlooked for a promotion. Is there a way that you would coach someone in a situation such as that, to help them, like, hey, say, you know what? You are amazing, and we're going to walk into that office Monday and you're going to tell them how amazing you are.
I think it's a longer process if we sort of zoom out from that one instance and look sort of longer, like a more systemic view, which is, did I get feedback as to why I'm not getting that promotion? And what does that feedback look like? Right. And what happens a lot of the times is when we are sort of operating from a younger part of ourselves, we go into this judging mindset. And it's like, again, adapting that curiosity to move into a learner mindset is really asking different questions. So instead of saying, why can't I get this promotion? It's like the question might be able to shift into a more curious space of like, who can I ask to for support to help me figure out what to do with this feedback? Or maybe the feedback is that I need to do more continuing ed, or I need to take a communication skills class, right? Like, so it's like, let's look at the feedback And let's allow ourselves to move from like a judger to a learner mindset with that curiosity piece that you spoke about.
No, I love the words you use in feedback. I feel like that's one of the greatest ways for us to grow. But people are afraid of that too.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
they're afraid of
And
that too.
I know. And that's one of the things. It's like, I always say feedback is like a gift, a pair of gloves that you get from your mom, maybe over the holidays. And maybe you just initially have a visceral reaction like, oh, these aren't my style. I don't like them. So you don't have to put them on. You look at them and you say, okay, does this work for me? If it doesn't work, you have options. You can put them away, you put them in a drawer. Maybe it comes out later. Maybe you try it on for a little bit and you're like, okay, it's starting to feel good on my hands and it feels good. Or maybe you just say, you know what, these aren't for me. I'm going to go return them. Or not. It's not that you
I
would
love
return
it.
them
I
to your
love
mom,
it.
but maybe you go to the store and you just say, you know what, I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. But the onus is on you to figure out what you're going to do with the feedback. Just because your manager gives you feedback doesn't mean you have to take it on.
No, that is I love that analogy. That's one of the things I say, find the jewels, right? So it's up to
Right.
you to find the jewels in that. But I like the analogy of like getting a pair of gloves and be like, I'm not feeling this, or these are my style. I like this. Because I just, being able to see that tactile component of it really helps. So speaking of visualization, you kind of alluded to that a little bit on how you kind of process and put yourself in third person. And athletes say that visualization is something that
Mhm.
helps them prepare for those greater moments. So to someone who, they want to be able to see themselves, but they have a block. Let's say they just, for some reason, they just get into this negative space. What would you say to them?
I would ask questions like, so what is the desired outcome, right? And sort of like work backwards. So if the outcome is, what would be a desired outcome in this instance? What do you think might be one?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the desired outcome is being able to see myself accomplishing these amazing things. I know I can do it, but for some reason, I can't get out of my own head.
Let's pick one thing that you want to focus on.
One thing I want to focus on, I want to focus on being more positive to myself.
Okay. So perfect. That's such a good one. We can like chunk it into small chunks. So let's start with 30 days. So what could you do daily to help yourself move into a habit of being more positive, right? So I would kind of like, instead of this lofty goal, I would dissect it into small digestible pieces, because I think we often get so wrapped up in like, I want to accomplish this in 2026, or I need to do this in 2025. And it's like, wait, that's 12 months. And it's like, to keep the momentum, let's focus on smaller chunks. And sometimes for people that we work with, 30 days is too much. So it's like, let's focus on just this week. Like, what can we do this week? And if you're a perpetual person that's constantly catastrophizing, it's like, maybe we focus on just the afternoon. Like, what
Yeah,
could you talk to yourself about just in the next 2 hours? What would be the self-talk and the dialogue that would help you in the next couple of hours? Because maybe a day or a week is even too big of a chunk for some people.
yeah, and that's a fantastic point, Nilu, because some of us, like, oftentimes we try to adapt other people's, success habits, and one of those habits is the long-term goals. And
Right.
I know so many people who get, they just struggle with that because of that uncertainty and not being able to really see themselves there yet. So I love that you said, hey, just make them proximal, make them closer to you, as close as you feel comfortable, so you can take that next step.
Right.
That's great advice. So when it comes to, like, let's say, I really want to, I'm at the point, you just hype me up as my coach, and we're talking about, like, I want to take that next step, but when it comes to doing that externally, I struggle. Like, as soon as that person gets in front of me, I'm like, I want to be my own cheerleader, but now I'm afraid because there is a person there. How do I get hyped up enough to say, you know what, I don't care who's in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and advocate for myself.
I think it's really around, I was telling you earlier about, and we talked about this, about, sending younger parts into the room. So it might just be an exercise of like a spatial reframe. So let's say you're in this space and you're like having this dialogue or this visualization with your younger self. Like maybe you send your younger self to the playground to go play and there's a caretaker. And then you just spatially move into a different space. And you're like, okay, now I am the whatever age adult you are, right? And I think just a small little shift in your body will translate into a different outcome. If you're seated, you're going to be smaller. Maybe you need to stand up, right? Our body, we can change our mind faster with our body than we can with our mind. So it's like make your body in a way, in a position that gives you more power. And then you've done all of those things with your coach or whoever prior to that meeting to set yourself up for success. And then for you, it's like, what is the optimum way in which I can communicate effectively? I think there's a lot of things you can do. I think one of the things is figuring out the recipe for you. And it doesn't have to be just one ingredient. It can be like 3 or 4 things that you do. And maybe you get to the point where you do it so quick that it's just like a few seconds and it's not this long, arduous process.
Yeah, and I like that. Again, curiosity, discovering what works for you. And
Right.
you're over here dropping some gems. So I hope the audience, I hope y'all go back and listen to what Nilu was saying, because that spatial reframe is key for so many of us, where we can kind of, things, a lot of what we're talking about here is physical. You get some type of inkling from your body, whether you get prickly hands, or you start sweating, or you start having a twitchy eye, whatever, and that's a signal. We just need to pay more attention to ourselves. So I'm glad that you're talking about that component. So we're gonna wrap up soon, but I want people to be able to find this book, right? I want, because you're clearly an expert at this, being your own cheerleader, and so many of us need this. So where can they go ahead and get a copy of this, Nilu?
Everywhere. So anywhere you read books, Audible, anywhere, if you listen, if you hear, like whatever, however you learn, you can find it. Amazon, Goodreads, like wherever. Just type in "Be Your Own Cheerleader" and you will find it in all places.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Go ahead and get that book. So before we conclude, what would be your parting advice to someone who's like, "Thank you, Nilu, for everything you gave me. I'm gonna go get my coach. I'm gonna start being my own cheerleader." But what's one more thing you would leave them with?
One small nugget would be practice everywhere. So what happens is if we wait until to practice in higher stakes situations, it feels viscerally uncomfortable. So, for example, practice at home, practice with your partner. If you don't feel like eating pizza, tell your partner, hey, I'd rather have Thai food. Like even a small gesture of just owning your own voice is helpful. So it's like a muscle. You just want to practice in situations where it feels easier and you're doing these reps so that when you're in your performance review, which feels higher stakes, it's easier to do it.
100% practice everything. Everything, we can get better at all of this.
Right.
So don't feel like it's a state of permanence. Like, you can change and get better. Like Neely said, you just have to practice. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
Before
My
we
pleasure. This
conclude,
was great.
one more thing. Let
Yeah.
everyone know how they can connect with you.
Yes, on LinkedIn, Neelu Kaur, on my website, neelukaur.com, and Instagram, Neelu Kaur. It's the same. It's pretty
She
much
makes it
everywhere.
easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn, actually. So that's like if you need an immediate response, that's the best place to reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nilu. Thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. And if you're watching the replay, still drop your comments and make sure you share this information. We want everyone to be their own cheerleader. We need more self-advocacy, and we need more celebration of self. So thank you again, Nilu, and
Thank you
we
so
look
much for
forward to
having me.
seeing you soon. My pleasure. And remember, everyone, keep ascending. We'll see you soon.